Welcome everyone to this week's Founder Chats, and I'm so excited to be here today with Sophia Cheng, who is the founder of With Many Roots. Before I introduce Sophia, first of all, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our show here, Sophia. And if you haven't been to one of our Founder Chats before, we are Volition, so we build connectivity and capacity and knowledge in global startup ecosystems. And I am one of the co-founders, Melanie Ewan. And what this is essentially for the past year, we've been putting on these weekly Founder Chats to connect with founders like Sophia in our community and outside of our community. We've been kind of growing outside and meeting new people, which is fantastic. And I think this is like the 37th one that I've got to do, and had this real honor and privilege of getting to know founders and learning a little bit about their journey, kind of the origin stories, what they've learned over the last year, but in their entire entrepreneurship journey, what they're looking forward to, and all the things. So it's really exciting. And we have all of these interviews on IGTV as well as YouTube, which is where this one is going to live afterwards as well. So whether you're joining us live right now or you're joining us on one of those spaces, welcome, and please feel free to ask questions, comment if you ask, and it's a recording. We'll make sure to get the questions to Sophia, and just really, this is like a casual kind of a conversation. So please do say hello and let us know who you are and ask questions. Alrighty, so with no further ado, I've known Sophia since 2019, I think. Yeah, beginning of 2019 through Digital Nomad Girls, which is a really incredible organization, company that brings together digital nomads from around the world, and helps us kind of connect to each other, learn from each other. I don't know the pitch for the company, but it's an incredible organization that we got to meet through, and we actually got to meet live in person in pre-COVID times a couple of times, actually right before COVID back in January 2020. We got to see each other, which was amazing. And I've been watching Sophia's journey and just was so excited with all of the growth that you've had, Sophia, and that you've grown it in a way that is values aligned, and that you've built this beautiful vision of this future that you want to like be a part of in this like very, very particular way. And it's just so incredible. So I wanted to share the story with our community. So if anyone's wondering what With Many Roots, I have a little blurb here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Sophia because she can do a much better job of talking about this. But here it says, the climate crisis, together with rising inequality, is the biggest issue of our time. Through workshops, mentoring, and words, With Many Roots will help you find your place in this movement. And I remember back in 2019 when it was like this eco-mentoring, like, I'll do this, I'll give it away for free to the world kind of amazing project, but it's turned into so much more. So I'm going to stop talking, and I would love for you to introduce yourself and introduce us to With Many Roots. What is the story behind this company that you have built?
Thank you for having me, Mel. I'm Sophia. I'm from the UK, currently in the UK. And although Mel and I met through a digital nomad community, I am no longer much of a nomad. I've returned back to my roots, to the UK, with the motivation of kind of being as useful as I can in the time we've got left to prevent runaway climate change. So really, I am trying to live by my values and figure out a way of like being useful to the world, in this sort of weird and crazy time that then got weirder and crazier as COVID hit. And With Many Roots has really kind of like grown with me. It really started out as just an infrastructure to contract. And it was through my existential crisis related to climate change that I realized it could be so much more. So it's really in COVID last year, this kind of time last year, in fact, Earth Day is my anniversary for delivering one of the first online workshops. And since then, I've wanted to explore climate science and climate silence. And then more broadly, inequality and how we weave those two narratives together right from the get-go. So that's the nutshell of With Many Roots.
Yeah, okay, so if I came across With Many Roots and I wanted to work with you, what would that look like? What does we talked about, I mentioned workshops. What do we have here? We have workshops, mentoring, and words. And I love that kind of combination, but what does that actually mean? How can I work with Sophia and With Many Roots?
Fabulous. It's a really good question. So the kind of main entrepreneurial step forward that we're making is through workshops. So understanding the climate science feels integral to taking any kind of substantial climate action. So I'm excited about kind of using my 10 years of communications experience and online experience and forging it through into meaningful, collaborative, participatory kind of educational exercises. I really hope are fun as well. I think it's important that we inject some levity where appropriate. So our like flagship workshop at the moment is the Climate Collage, which is a French tool that I'm kind of trying to reach more people in the UK. I'm one of the UK coordinators, but I also have a US colleague now, and she is trying to reach more of a US or North American audience over there. But what's exciting is we've been doing that for a year now, or just about picking up the momentum, and now we're expanding to the kind of what next space. But without that understanding, I don't think we can do the action. But now there's curiosity about like what that action looks like and how can we kind of keep that participatory, collaborative, imaginative thread running through it.
Yeah, amazing. And who are the kind of people that you're working with right now? Like in terms of like, my brain's going to something we've talked about, which is like me as a founder. If I'm like, I didn't start with my company with kind of those foundations in mind in terms of wanting to keep the climate crisis in mind with my business planning. Am I someone who could come to you and work with you, or who are you working with right now?
Yes, I mean, that's been part of the entrepreneurial journey, is kind of scoping out that piece. Like for us, you know, in many ways, climate education could be everyone, but obviously that's not the best business strategy. And when we were thinking about how to have the most impact in the limited space of time, we wanted to reach kind of leaders and organizations and companies. So on the one hand, we want to get like our foot in your household names, because they have huge impacts and they have the kind of market drive to cut their emissions because the tide is turning. But I'm also super curious about smaller SMEs and startups and how we can embed that ethos earlier on. Like it's much easier to, you know, teach a child about it than unpick an unlearning of an adult. So in kind of organizational levels as well. I'm super curious. And what's really interesting is it's a learning exercise, but then you can adapt the debrief and have a discussion about what's relevant to you as a founder in your industry and that kind of thing.
Yeah, cool. I'm super curious, what is kind of like the moment in an entrepreneur's journey who's not starting out as like an impact entrepreneur, which there are a lot more of now, especially younger entrepreneurs I work with. It's so exciting to see how they are already thinking about these things, even if they're not like a sustainability brand or a sustainable brand, they're still thinking about this, which is really cool. But for those of us who are later generations, I'm really curious about where is that like perfect point for you and people like yourself and your team to be working with startups. And I'm saying this out loud because if you are watching this, I am super curious if you would be interested in something like this. So I'm hoping to work with Sophia and try to learn like how at this point in our journey we would start thinking about this and do these activities. And I don't know what that looks like yet. And so I'm really curious to hear more about your journey and maybe to help, and maybe our community can also help. And if you're like, yeah, I want to learn how to integrate, you know, thinking about this lens around climate crisis into my business planning, then please say something because I love to know. I think we have a question actually, which is very exciting. Okay, so Digital Nomad Girls, which you mentioned earlier, has asked a question. Do you teach other entrepreneurs how to incorporate this education into their own business?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, what's really interesting about the Climate Collage tool, which was founded by a guy, a French engineer called Cedric Ringenbach, he is a very kind of train the trainer mentality built in. So yeah, absolutely. Depending on the capacity of the organization, they are training up their own staff. So EDF Energy, which is like a huge international energy company, are rolling out to all their thousands of staff. If you're just a small team, you might not need to take that on yourself, but essentially what it does is give everyone puts everyone on the level playing field.
Yeah.
And now we've all had the similar experience and we're all using the same language, and now we can have a more constructive conversation after that. So it's, for me, it's that leveling and that like perspective piece to join up all the dots. And you mentioned like where in the journey for an entrepreneur, like I think that you probably are familiar with the climate crisis by now, and even if we are fortunate enough that it hasn't directly impacted our business or our lives, depending on where we live and the kind of lifestyle that we lead, it's a reality that is worth turning towards before it comes and bites us on the ass. So for me, it's that invitation to face it, but face it in a way that you don't need to do it on your own. Like, bring your people with you. You as the founder doesn't need to solve this. No one individual, no one business, however small or large, is going to solve the climate crisis. So really it's that kind of collaborative discussion piece, and allowing the expertise and the creativity of your team to come up with solutions and get really excited about it and deliver it from that point onwards.
I love it. I would love to see, I have all these thought bubbles in my brain right now of like the startup boot camps we do, and like all these things, and like the education that happens in all these different like accelerators and universities working with entrepreneurs, that this could be like just a part of the curriculum now, from the very beginning. I think that would be amazing. So I'm just going to start pitching you all over the place with that. If you're watching this right now and you're interested and you're building some sort of accelerator or boot camp, or base camp, or whatever you're building, that's amazing. Just get it in really early, and I think that's really, really important. So speaking of, I know we're talking about your company and working with entrepreneurs, but of course you've had your own entrepreneurial journey as well, which I think is really interesting. And I know you've talked to me about how you're kind of like, you're growing and moving to growing the baby, as you've said. So I'd love to know, what has that journey been like for you? I know you did like kind of contract work before. Like, what has that looked like since 2019, when you first kind of conceptualized this, or started growing it, I guess? What has your entrepreneur journey looked like?
Tentative.
Yeah.
in a word. Very, very cautious.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm super even comfortable with the word entrepreneur
yet.
I think like, I feel a little bit outside that world. And I'm also trying to work out what growing
means for you.
And actually, is entrepreneur almost an oxymoron in a climate crisis? Like I've sort of used the phrase climate entrepreneur. I'm like, is that a thing?
Climate-preneur?
Like, is that, but then, because it's a world based on growth in a world that is no longer fit for growth for the sake of growth. So this kind of paradigm shift, and in terms of looking for role models, obviously you've got your Patagonias and you've got your B Corps who are like well established and things like that, but I haven't seen like that many like smaller initiatives kind of like figure out how to do this or lay down the roadmap. So I'm really curious to kind of identify and relate with other people in this space that are really trying to define what business in the Anthropocene can look like.
Okay, I have some people I think would be very interested to talk to you. So we have Digital Nomad Girls here saying, yes, I call it enough business, and also was saying that they find it funny to hear you call yourself cautious. I guess that's not a word that I'm assuming it's Jenny behind there watching this right now, would use. Hi, Jenny. Would use to describe you. But I think it's an important kind of tactic to take, though. So typically, like when I talk to entrepreneurs each week, or founders, or however they talk about themselves, because they also don't necessarily call themselves entrepreneurs, people I talk with either. When I talk about like what was one thing that you learned in your journey, often it's patience. So it's learning to slow down so that you can take the right steps, and learning that things don't happen overnight, and they shouldn't. And to do things in the way that you want them to go, and to learn the lessons, kind of being patient and taking steps in that kind of cautious way, potentially, or what you might define as cautious, or others might define as cautious, can be really beneficial for your journey. So I think that's whatever word that ends up being, I hear you on that, and I think you're not alone, and that like tentative kind of approach, you're not alone in that, especially for people who didn't set out to build a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's important to note that like there's a paradox in here in which, you know, it's something I'm starting, but does the world need another founder, another entrepreneur? And it really came out of exploring and experimenting how to be useful, and that, to be honest, that started with activism. You know, sitting in the street waving a banner, or like delivering kind of speeches and presentations. And because of COVID and all those restrictions placed on us, I was like, okay, well, I've got these skills and there is a need for this, so I'm kind of stepping into it, and I'm glad that I took that time rather than jump in before that. And I feel much more confident in why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I want to bring people with me. And I think that's coming through now.
Yeah, I think so. I love that. And I think that's, that's a conversation I would love to have with our community around those who started with activism, and that like the tension between being this, what other people call entrepreneur or business or founder, or what's the word? The small business owner is the one that is more often used. But that kind of like that gray line, or the tension between being the business owner and the activist, and I've been trying to figure out how to bridge back to my kind of advocacy and activist roots from when I was younger. And it's very difficult. And I think it's important to have people talk to you about it. So I really appreciate you talking about that here today. And I know, again, that you're not alone in the startup space. It may feel like it, but there are others out there that are in the same space, often kind of more in the impact startup space, but still, I think it's really interesting. So what does kind of the future of With Many Roots look like to you then?
That's a good question. The future looks like we set aside this year to kind of demonstrate and really test, is this fit for purpose? You know, does this have legs? And what's been amazing is since a friend and colleague and partner came on board, Alison, it's really helped me like level up and go, okay, like this could be something. And I've had lots of encouragement from lots of wonderful people, including yourself and Jenny, who's here as well, to really push through with this. So on the one hand, it is reaching as many people as possible with quality, considered, you know, empathic facilitation and education around this topic. And with that, that's a kind of tiered pricing, reaching organizations that can pay, because there is plenty of money around, those higher price points, and then really working on the outreach piece with the grassroots organizations and different initiatives. So there's that piece, that thread, and we'd love to then sort of combine it with these other workshops, so that it's a sort of create your own path,
choose your own adventure.
Yes, exactly, that fits kind of, you know, the small organization that need to go a certain particular route, or the wider organization that actually needs to do the trainer model. And then, you know, it's also a piece where we can offer one-to-one mentoring potentially, and then also, you know, use the platform as we grow to have conversations like this, get into different spaces, you know, ruffle a few feathers gently, kind of do that provocation, and then kind of get people to come back and do the learning piece with us as well. We've got lots of plans and ideas, but I also know I need to focus on like what next, and at the moment I'm probably a bit more money orientated, because I just need to
be sustainable.
That piece. You
can't be around here this time next year if you don't have a sustainable business model. And that's part of that tension that we're talking about between wanting to be the activist and just like give back all the time and actually need to be sustainable with that.
And challenging what has value, and then compensating for that value where it exists. I think like one of the pieces we want to do is train up facilitators, but if you are expecting everyone to do it for free, you really narrow the type by class, by gender, by race, or socioeconomic.
Who can volunteer their time? Like think about who that person is. Absolutely.
Exactly. And you know, the climate communications and environmental sector has issues with this, and to be honest, we're trying to shed that, even though I'm very much, you know, come from that, like, yes, I'll give it to you for free. You know, I'm like, no, it's got value. So this is a learning exercise and reiterating, which is interesting to be in communities that are trying to do that as well, where you can celebrate your wins and things like that. So learning the whole time.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, we have another question in from you. Do you have any advice on how to run our businesses in an anti-capitalist way within a capitalist system? Just a little question, you know, just off the cuff.
Well, thankfully you should ask. I've got a one-word answer. No, what I quite like about having a business is that it's an infrastructure. It's a legitimate infrastructure. I've got the governance, you know, I'm ticking all those piece of boxes, but I can design it.
Yes.
And it's a way that I can create a window of the possible right now. And, you know, yes, I'm small fry and I'm not like bringing in the big guns, but I can demonstrate, hopefully very soon, you know, a different ethos to business. So for example, we give 10% of our annual profit away every year as part of the effective altruism, giving what you can piece. So we're trying to practice some of the donut economic principles from Kate Warworth, like big fangirl, and experiment with what that looks like. The other piece is going through the B Corp steps, early doors, again, rather than trying to do it retrospectively. So it's what you place your success on and what are you measuring. So we are also going to start measuring our carbon footprint alongside our other accounts as well this year, for example. So I guess trying to embed what we think the new normal should be right from the get-go. But I don't have a blueprint, to be honest, and I'm trying to find other people that are trying to work that out as well.
Yeah, and it sounded like kind of looking into the B Corp process helps a little bit with kind of like strategizing or building a structure for your future and being like, I'm not there yet, and that's going to take all these steps, but here is the beginnings of some form of blueprint, and then kind of like creating it for yourself. But it sounded like that was an interesting first step for you. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that B Corp were always on this elusive pedestal of amazing organizations. And then I went to an event and they took us under the hood and I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'm not a B Corp status yet. I know that, but you fill in the impact assessment, you get your points, and then you know your areas. And then it says, you know, to get the top marks for this, you need this kind of policy, you need this kind of statements and processes in place. So I'm like, I'll do that then.
Yeah,
you know?
That's fantastic.
I need to reinvent this, and people are already doing it, so it's really helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And I just want to say welcome to those who have joined us since I last said hello. So we did start a little bit late. So Sophia, are you okay to go kind of 5-10 minutes over? Yes? Okay, amazing. Because I have a couple more questions and I just wanted to say hi to everyone and let you know that if you missed the previous 20 minutes or ish, then you can come back to IGTV or our YouTube and it's going to live there forevermore. So you can always go back and watch this and ask questions, and we'll make sure that Sophia gets your questions, or you can just tag her in your question and then obviously she'll get your question. So hello, feel free to ask anything at this point in time. So what was I going to say? Okay, so that's great advice for people who are looking to take those kind of first steps and learn a little bit. And I was curious also, I know you talked about that you were a little bit tentative when you first started your journey in whatever word you want to call yourself over the last few years with Many Roots. And I was curious about if you had kind of a tip for your peers. So usually I say tip for your peer entrepreneurs, but for those who are listening to this and just in general are relating to what you're saying, and they're kind of maybe at the beginning of a journey, like thinking about building their own version of a With Many Roots for themselves, or for everyone. Do you have any kind of tips or advice for anyone just starting their journey?
I think anyone trying to carve out a new path, I did this with the digital nomad world as well. I was like, find the people that are already doing it and surround yourself with those people. You know, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am now had I not known that I could relate to other people who were also doing this. You know, seeing other women becoming business owners and growing and hiring and all this kind of stuff is just, you pick up the kind of confidence almost by osmosis. And then it was suddenly like, when I was ready to pivot during COVID, I had inadvertently, also some bits intentionally, picked up all the experience I needed to go, this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm doing it. And there's a great poem that I cannot remember the words of, but essentially nothing is wasted. So it's about kind of pulling on all that experience, and maybe you had a kind of roundabout career, but it all throws in. You know, I left the corporate sector 7 years ago, but now I'm pulling on my employee engagement and internal comms language to like now talk back to the corporate. So it's really interesting. Find a mentor, and my personal suggestion would be a bit of therapy to go alongside it, because this like it's a business growth piece, but it's a personal growth piece, and I'm kind of following that line of personal development alongside this wider growth as well.
Amazing. Okay, so on your journey, what at this point in your time with your company, what can we as your community do to support you? What would your ask be here today of us?
Come with your curiosity. Come along with your ideas. If you want to swat up on climate science and like really get the big picture, we run community workshops once a month, where we get really interesting people in and really cover it. I'm also training up new facilitators, so we're looking for people who are happy to run workshops with newbies and do that kind of supporting piece. So through the digital nomad community, we're running 8 workshops with 5 of them are new facilitators. So there's that kind of like supporting piece, the current, that hopefully runs under everything we do. Obviously, if you think you can get in with a corporate or an organization that can supply paid workshops, like that's the piece that's going to keep us sustainable. So I'm all ears, basically.
Okay, fantastic. And people can find you at www.withmanyroots.com. Also, you're on all the socials, it kind of looks like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at With Many Roots. Is that correct? Okay, and where is the best place for someone to reach out and connect with you personally?
Probably LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then, yeah, LinkedIn. I was going to say email, but actually that inbox is awful. LinkedIn will be great.
Fantastic. Alrighty, great. And I feel like there was something else. Oh, I know what it was. I keep looking at your background. And I finished The Future We Choose a few months ago. Yeah, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I constantly hear questions around what kind of resources can I, what are some resources that I can dig into, whether it's podcasts or books or what have you. And I'd be curious if you have anything, again, for those kind of like, especially companies or people who want to kind of learn more, educate themselves, or like learn about that climate crisis lens and how they can apply that in their work. Be curious to hear about that. If you have any resource suggestions, I'm just throwing this on you right now. So if you don't, you can just send it to me as well.
No, I love a good resource. I suppose
frozen a touch there. Oh, you're back.
The B Corp journey,
okay.
The B Corp Handbook, the 2nd edition, comes highly recommended. So that's really thinking about your business through the environmental, economic, and social lens. So it's really broad, and that's kind of the scale that we need to be thinking. So I'd start there, and then I recommend all of these books.
Which I can't see the title. I see The Future We Choose, and then
Future We Choose. This is From What Is to What If. So this is really about like this is my colleague's mom drew this sketch. So like we've got a lot of threats in our lives, like the stick, the science is bad, but what about the carrot? What's pulling us towards a future that we actually want to be in? So Rob Hopkins has done that and really kind of transformed how I think about this. So we run climate fiction sessions off the back of that. And Permission to Feel is the kind of personal growth piece that if we can be more emotionally articulate, that's going to help us in all things and including business.
Okay, I love it. So the B Corp Handbook, 2nd edition, The Future We Choose, From What to What If?
What Is to What If.
What Is to What If, and
permission to fill.
Thank you.
All the books.
All the books, yes. Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so now that we're kind of at the end here and wrapping up, and hello to those who've just joined us, I'd love to know, is there anything that we haven't touched on here today that you had wanted to speak about?
No, well, one last thing is that just to recognize that it's Earth Week this week,
Oh,
Earth
right,
Day
of course.
On Thursday.
Yes.
So, you know, this is a really interesting moment. If you ever wanted to strike up a conversation, the president of the US is hosting, you know, global summits. There's lots of initiatives. And my invitation would be to raise the conversation. So the theme this year is Restore Our Earth, particularly as we maybe sort of venture out of COVID in a way. What does restoration look like? What does coming back to normal look like? And how can the path that we create out of COVID, out of this economic downturn, support not only the climate and ecological crisis, but kind of the economic injustice that we find ourselves in as well. So the invitation to ask questions, stay curious and get creative.
Amazing. And you can go to earthday.org to see more about that as well, and see more about Restore Our Earth as that theme for this year. And I think they also have a list of actions that you can take. There's like 51 actions, and you can add your own as well, that are kind of like simple things that some simple, some not as simple things that we can all do. And it's everything from educating to like reaching out to your governments to whatever, like just little things around like straws and whatnot. So all the things, if you're kind of like feeling like I want to do something and I want to add something to my life, and you're not sure what, then I feel like that's a place to start anyways. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophia. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being here. Once again, everyone, reach out to Sophia, reach out to With Many Roots. If you're interested in these workshops that they're running, if you're interested in just learning more about about the climate crisis and how to apply that lens in the work that you're doing, whether it's in corporations or if you have a different idea for Sophia, she's still growing and learning as we all are with her team, then please do reach out to them at With Many Roots on all the socials. Sophia on LinkedIn, and www.withmanyroots.com. And of course, Earth Day, thank you for mentioning that. I can't believe I forgot it. It was like a reason for you to be on this week, was like so close to Earth Day. Fantastic. So I have one last question for you, Sophia, and that is, what is one thing that brings you joy right now?
The community initiative we're running, and seeing women that I've known remotely over a couple of years step into this amazing brave climate action and spread climate education. It's community through and through. I'm so proud of what we're growing. I'm so excited to see where this goes. Like, this beast is bigger than me. So I'm excited to kind of ride that train.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy that I got to speak to you on here, and I got to share the first of many, hopefully, interviews with my digital nomad girls community. I know many of us are not nomadic at all right now, and we've also changed what that means to us, but it's such an incredible community, and I appreciate it so much, and I have been missing you, so it's lovely to get to talk to you as I start crying. It's just been lovely to talk to you and get to share your story. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us here today. I see you there. And thanks to everyone else who joined us, whether you're joining us live right now or on IGTV or YouTube later. We really appreciate you being here. Again, please continue to ask questions. Feel free to share this as well. We would love that if you like and share and comment and all the things, and bump it up in the algorithm so everyone can hear this story. That would be amazing. Really appreciate it. So I will be back here, not next week, because I actually have to move, hopefully, next week to Montreal, but I'll be back the week after with our weekly founder chats. Happy Earth. I saw Earth Day, Earth Week. It's also Earth Month, I think, so all the things. Jenny's saying so proud of you. Absolutely. So again, thank you so much, and I will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Mel. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.